Tonight at 6, a rethink by the government over a national inquiry on grooming gangs. The Home Secretary announces what she calls a rapid audit lasting 3 months, plus up to 5 new local inquiries.
To protect victims, put perpetrators behind bars, and to uncover the truth wherever things have gone wrong.
Also tonight, Israel's cabinet is still to pass the ceasefire deal agreed with Hamas as dozens of Palestinians are killed in Israeli airstrikes. Meanwhile, aid lorries queue up to get into Gaza once there is a deal. We follow a convoy on its way. A teenager is found guilty of the murder of 15-year-old schoolgirl Eliane Andam in a row over a teddy bear. More evidence of hospitals in England under pressure this winter, with the highest numbers of beds occupied so far.
She's dying.
And a career first for Britain's Emma Raducanu, making it through to the 3rd round of the Australian Open.
On BBC London, the family of Eliane Andam describe how their world's been shattered and their hearts broken as a teenager is found guilty of her murder.
Good evening. The government has shifted its position on the issue of grooming gangs, with the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper putting in place what she calls a rapid 3-month audit of the situation. It'll be led by Dame Louise Casey and look at the cultural and societal drivers of child sex abuse. There'll also be 5 local inquiries. Ministers have been under pressure from the billionaire Elon Musk and opposition parties here to hold a national inquiry after a request by Oldham Council for a government-led probe was rejected. Our UK editor Ed Thomas has been speaking to 4 women affected in Oldham, and some names have been changed to protect their identities.
As a child, it ruined my life, and it could have been prevented.
A journey 20 years in the making. So how old were you both when the exploitation started?
Me, it was 11.
I was 12.
Sam and Jane, survivors of Oldham's grooming gangs.
Well, I was described as a criminal, a prostitute.
I was called a compulsive liar all the time.
Now on the road to meet Jess Phillips, the Safeguarding Minister, to ask why she rejected Oldham Council's calls for a government-led inquiry into abuse in the town.
I wanted to listen to survivors, look at it from our point of view.
And what's the one thing you'll say to Jess Phillips?
Please give us a government inquiry. We need this.
From morning to afternoon, separate survivors and victim support workers from Oldham came to Birmingham to meet Jess Phillips.
Hiya, nice to meet you. Hayley, nice to meet you.
And at the same time, a government announcement in the Commons, action on grooming gangs. Relief for some. None of the survivors we've been speaking to knew this was happening today. The Home Secretary announcing a new national rapid audit of grooming gangs, examining the ethnic background of abusers, and also it will support 5 victim-centred local inquiries, including one in Oldham. And a lot to take in for these survivors today.
I feel like the weight of the world has been lifted off my shoulders. I'm satisfied for now, but actions speak louder than words.
Let's see what happens now. Let's, see if they actually act on what they've said.
From Oldham to a national debate, the pressure has been relentless on Jess Phillips. Tweets from Elon Musk, even death threats.
What the Home Secretary has announced today is a process like what happened in Telford of victim-led independent inquiries, and actually the sense of relief of what I was talking to them about, of most of the victims I've been with today, was very clear.
But what next for Sam and Jane, 2 survivors still demanding justice? Are you happy with what you've got?
No.
Not at all, no.
We're survivors, we've been through what we've been through. It's the children now and other people that are going through it. We don't want them to be let down, and that's the whole point of what we're fighting for.
Ed Thomas, BBC News, Birmingham.
Well, in a moment, we'll speak to our political editor, Chris Mason. But first, our social affairs editor, Alison Holt, joins me. Alison, that's the view from Oldham. But what else do we know about the government's plans?
Well, as Ed just said, there will be 5 different inquiries in local areas. So those will be focused on the victims and led locally, but they will get support from central government. So Tom Crowther KC, who led an inquiry into Telford previously, he will provide support and help build a framework for these inquiries. The rapid audit of existing evidence will be carried out by Baroness Louise Casey. It will take 3 months. It will look into a range of existing cases, data, etc., and also ethnicity and cultural drivers towards grooming. There is also a broader push to get more data collected by police forces and by councils on these issues. And by Easter, the Home Secretary says they will have set out a timetable for meeting the 20 recommendations of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. Now, that was the big inquiry led by Professor Alexis Jay, took 7 years. And one of the points she has made really strongly in the last 2 weeks is they heard from more than 7,000 survivors of abuse during that time. And she believes that what they want is action rather than more talk. So this announcement is trying to tread a really careful path between those competing demands.
Alison, thank you very much. And to Chris Mason now, is this a backtrack, Chris, or a climb down by the government?
Yeah, hello to you, Rita. There is no doubt that those in government have been very alive to what's been going on in terms of the debate that's been raging publicly. We couldn't just leave it, is how one senior figure put it to me just now. In other words, that argument that we saw, the blazing rage that was then fanned by Elon Musk on his social media platform X, was something the government had to address. Now, as we were just hearing, this does not amount to the national public inquiry that some are still calling for, but the Home Secretary hopes that it's enough to extinguish or at least dampen down those accusations of a cover-up, whilst at the same time, as Alison mentioned, nodding to other prominent voices, not least the author of the last inquiry, that another one would be counterproductive. There are those who think, you know, that all of this has been politicising those who suffered vile abuse. And yes, there has been some opportunism. It is also true that all of this publicity has compelled the government to act, and act quicker than it might otherwise have done.
Chris Mason in Westminster, thank you. There's a delay this evening over a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. The agreement still needs to be voted on by the Israeli cabinet, who now say they'll meet tomorrow after accusing Hamas of pushing for new concessions that are not in the deal. Overnight, Israeli airstrikes in Gaza killed more than 70 people, according to the Hamas-run Health Ministry, a figure which includes women and children. This report is by Jeremy Bowen.
Just a few hours after the ceasefire agreement was announced, men in northern Gaza were back digging through the rubble for the dead and wounded after an Israeli strike. The ceasefire is not due to start until Sunday. Then they heard a small voice. He was alive. Strong enough to wave for help. His name is Assad Fadl Khalifa. His parents, sister, aunt and uncle, we're told, were killed in the strike. He's 3 years old. His mouth was full of gravel and dust. He was trying to pull it out himself. We went to Nablus on the West Bank, the other side of the occupied Palestinian territories, to try to assess the mood. Israel won't let us into Gaza. Nablus is a Palestinian city with a long history of resistance to the Israeli occupation. It's a toy gun. Down the street, the faces of men killed using real guns to fight Israelis, some from a militia known as the Lion's Den. Heroic martyrs here, terrorists as far as Israel is concerned. Amma has a stall selling sweet corn.
Peace is difficult because you need to go back to the religion and doctrine. But we would love for the bombing to stop and for them to leave Gaza and for the prisoners to get free and for everyone to go back to their homes and family because they suffered a lot in this war. May God help them.
At her stall, Amina is desperate for the ceasefire to work.
It affected us a lot here, both financially and mentally. We, especially women, are affected by what we are seeing, the children who are dying. We hope we could help, but we can only pray.
Just outside Nablus is the Jewish settlement of Kedumim, home to leaders of the settler movement. Daniela Weiss has lived here for 50 years. Now she's working through her list of right-wing connections as she tries to overturn the ceasefire deal she says is treachery.
What does all this mean for Israel? What does it add up to?
In simple words, get ready for another war. It's cruel, dangerous, with many casualties. This is what it means today. Donald Trump there in the United States declares that he wants to see the end of wars. Good for you where you are situated and with us giving our flesh and blood for you to have a standing in the Middle East, because you care for the I'm speaking now to Donald Trump, you care for the United States. Very noble declaration.
In Jerusalem, a fake funeral outside the office of Prime Minister Netanyahu by Israelis who want to bury the ceasefire deal. They want the Prime Minister to keep his promise to destroy Hamas and rescue all the hostages, not negotiate a swap for Palestinian prisoners they regard as terrorists. Police arrested a few of them. Many Israelis support the ceasefire, but the coffins intended as a warning of danger ahead for Israel are also a sign to the ceasefire's supporters that making it work will not be easy. Jeremy Bowen, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Well, meanwhile, aid trucks are queuing at the southern crossing into Gaza, waiting for the ceasefire expected on Sunday. Aid has got into Gaza from a number of crossings since the war began. Before it, around 500 lorry loads of aid entered every day, according to the UN, but that plummeted to 9 a day in the period after the war started. At the beginning of January, it was averaging 51 truckloads daily. The ceasefire deal allows for 600 lorry loads a day. Fergal Keane has been travelling with an aid convoy from Jordan and a warning that his report contains pictures of distressed children.
Help is coming. Down along the valley, the biggest aid convoy since the war began. Solidarity from the Kingdom of Jordan. In 2 deliveries, 120 trucks on the road to Gaza, from a country that is home to many Palestinians. We're carrying aid like food and medication for our brothers in Gaza, says Mustafa Al-Qadri. This is a good deed. We're happy to be part of this operation.
We can travel with this convoy as far as the Israeli border. But since the war began, Israel does not allow the foreign media to enter Gaza and report independently. But our BBC colleagues living in Gaza have been filming every day, including today, the first real moment of hope.
They're waiting for today's meagre charity. Little wonder that tired tempers fray when you've lived this struggle every day. The aid from Jordan is the tiniest fraction of what's needed here. But it does say to the people of Gaza, by your neighbour at least, you're not forgotten.
I used to shop and go to school, and my mom used to cook for me, and when I got back, she would tell me to come eat. I dream every day about the ceasefire. I want to go home and for my father to return to us.
They would have heard about the ceasefire, perhaps celebrated with their families, before the Israeli airstrike. Never have days and nights been so long. as those there enduring now. Tamer Abu Shaban's niece was killed.
Is this the ceasefire they're talking about? What did this young girl, this child, do to deserve this?
Throughout this war, Gaza's civilians have used those same words again and again. Their great unanswered question to the world. Fergal Keane, BBC News, Jerusalem.
The Prime Minister has visited Ukraine for the first time since the general election. Sir Keir Starmer restated the UK's commitment to supporting Ukraine and laid a wreath commemorating soldiers killed in the war with Russia. Along with President Zelensky, he also signed a 100-year-long pact to strengthen military and other cooperation. A teenager who repeatedly stabbed a 15-year-old schoolgirl, Eliane Andam, outside a shopping centre in South London, has been found guilty of her murder. Hassan Sentamou, who was then 17, attacked Eliane during a row over a teddy bear in September 2023. Adina Campbell is outside the Old Bailey for us now. Adina.
After almost 12 hours deliberating, the jury of 9 men and 3 women reached a guilty murder verdict here at the Old Bailey. Hassan Sentamou wept and was seen wiping away his tears in the dock. There was screaming and shouting from the public gallery, and he was called a murderer. As for Eliane Andam's family, there were huge sighs of relief, and they were seen hugging each other as they left the courtroom, 16 months on since the schoolgirl was brutally murdered in broad daylight. Eliane Andam, an aspiring lawyer, described by her family as beautiful, outspoken and respectful. The 15-year-old was a close friend of Hassan Sentamou's ex-girlfriend. In her last Snapchat video, she talks about the couple's recent split and how he failed to return her friend's belongings, including a teddy bear. She takes back the bag her friend has handed to Sentamou with his possessions in and runs off. He then chases her and stabs her multiple times with a kitchen knife in the neck, shoulder and leg.
I'm looking for someone who's just stabbed someone.
Less than 90 minutes later, he's arrested by police after disposing of the knife in a front garden.
The verdict today is the first step towards justice for Eliane, but also a message that violence and knife crime, especially towards young women, will not go unanswered.
Community leader Anthony King was one of the first eyewitnesses on the scene, where a mural of Eliane was unveiled last September.
I still have flashbacks. I do hear the sound of the girls screaming out that day as the news was broken to them.
During the trial, the court heard that Hassan Sentamou had been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder when he was 14. He'd also spent some of his teenage years in foster care, a pupil referral unit, and in a special educational needs school, following reports of self-harm, suicidal thoughts and violence with knives. But the jury did not believe his autism led to diminished responsibility, and the 18-year-old is now facing a life sentence in prison.
She was always reading. You know, she's a very, very academically always reading.
How do you want people to remember Eliane?
I want people to always know that a very beautiful girl has been lost.
Adina Campbell, BBC News.
The time is just coming up to 19 minutes past 6. Our top story this evening. A rethink by the government over a national inquiry on grooming gangs, with a rapid audit lasting 3 months and 5 new local inquiries. And coming up, fleeing the LA wildfires, we'll hear one community's story as the deadly blaze approached their homes.
And on BBC London, questions over tube safety after a pensioner who died on the tracks was run over by 4 trains. And we meet the London riders revving up for motocross freestyle at Wembley.
Improving weather conditions and slower winds across Southern California are giving exhausted fire crews some respite as they try to continue to contain the devastating fires across Los Angeles. The fires began more than a week ago and have killed at least 25 people. Clive Myrie reports.
Oh no!
This is the story of an American tragedy. Another sunny day in Southern California is about to turn very dark.
So I'm sitting at home on the couch with the dogs. Shell comes in the house and says,
"Hey babe, I need you to come out here right now. We have a very big problem." What? Oh!
Cheryl Koo had spotted a fire in the canyon above the house she shares with husband Jeffrey in a suburb of Los Angeles.
Oh no!
High winds were threatening a catastrophe, and their doorbell camera captures what happened next.
We discussed things that we couldn't leave behind. Essentially, we needed to leave as quickly as we could.
By now, word was spreading very quickly that danger was approaching from the canyon. Neighbors went banging on doors, raising the alarm. David Stover was in the middle of dinner.
We came out and we could see the fire, from here.
Do you think they saved your life?
They gave us a head start.
Right.
About 5 minutes, so that makes a difference.
Please God, save us, save our house.
5 minutes, precious extra time to escape. Given that just a few minutes later, as Jeffrey and Cheryl fled their home,
Bye.
the fire had turned into a monster, becoming one of the largest that's now devastated the metropolitan Los Angeles area, the Eaton Fire. Eaton wasn't the only monster burning. There were multiple fire fronts, and the authorities were struggling to cope. Then, a stroke of luck. Hurricane-force winds that had fanned the flames died down, which meant the cavalry could now fly in. An aerial armada was pressed into service to douse the flames, some dropping fire retardant colored pink to show where it's landed. It's a round-the-clock operation, flying low at night to beat the flames. While down below, thousands of men and women are standing their ground in the face of the enemy.
It's an IR map of all the heats around here.
But even when the flames are extinguished, danger still lurks.
So right down in this drainage, there's a few heats just all around us.
This team of firefighters are heat spotters. Their job to prevent the burning you can't see below ground, where the root systems of trees can smolder and die, leading to catastrophic landslides. This crew are from Oregon, part of a resolute national response to this crisis that has gripped the world. And it's the stories of loss and pain that resonate. Homes and livelihoods destroyed. Wow. A landscape scarred.
Look at that.
A people traumatized.
The house behind me was burning, the house on the right was burning, the house on the left was burning.
Michael Haynes is a writer, and when he ran out of water to save his own home, he improvised.
You don't think, your logic turns off. I started peeing, that's one little fire I could put out.
You peed on the fire?
Yeah, and I've talked to a few other people who did the same thing.
Yeah, you can see the fires fizzled out on the edge of his property. He was lucky. So many others were not. How does this community, Los Angeles, America, all of us, how can we better prepare for a similar catastrophe? That is a question we should all ponder.
This is the most beautiful place in the world to me, and now it's just gone. It's gone. A little bit you dies with it. I don't know.
And that was Michael Haynes ending that report by Clive. Here, Ryan Wellings, a father of three who psychologically and physically abused his vulnerable partner before she killed herself, has been jailed for 6.5 years. The judge said that Kienna Dawes was a popular, vivacious, friendly young woman who had a history of mental illness and was vulnerable to abuse and exploitation, and that Wellings is a clear danger to any partner he has in the future. Hospitals in England were last week at their busiest so far this winter, with 96% of beds occupied, according to the latest figures. And flu continues to be a concern, with just under 5,000 people in hospital beds across England on average every day last week. That's lower than a week before, but it's still more than 3 times higher than at the same time last year. Our health editor Hugh Pym has been to the emergency department at Chesterfield Royal Hospital in Derbyshire.
I'm running out of oxygen cylinders. I've not got no oxygen either.
Lisa has 5 ambulances on the way. Trolleys and oxygen are needed fast.
At this moment in time, I've got 27 patients in Majors with 16 stretchers.
The Majors area has 22 cubicles, and once they're all full,
I went, no, I've got 30 patients, an ambulatory and 1 nurse.
Yeah.
Okay.
trolleys are lined up outside.
Nobody wants to be nursed where everyone can see. It feels uncomfortable and it's not nice. There's privacy and dignity concerns.
For those working on the flu ward, this week has been a turning point. Numbers are finally falling.
Have the doctors given you any idea of how long you're going to be with us, John?
Oh, a week at least, I think.
Yeah.
But John, a flu patient, is still there.
What's your message to people out there about how nasty flu can be?
Just look after yourself, wrap yourself up, for goodness sake. Turn the heating up.
Hello, sir. My name's Daniel Crook. I'm one of the consultants.
Back in the emergency department, Michael has just arrived. The cold has hit him hard.
Normally fairly fit and well, is quite confused and is hypothermic about 30.
What's the last thing you remember? You get people that feel okay but then get sort of used to the cold, or people fear putting their heating on and sit there and become unwell without realising it.
Now go through. Team to A&E, ambulance B2.
James has just arrived by ambulance. He needs to warm up fast. They think he has sepsis.
He's put up with it for quite a while. As a farmer, he's sort of soldiered on, but now he's really critically unwell. You okay, James?
They find him space in the ambulance arrival zone.
Ideally, we wanted to see him in the resuscitation room, but there wasn't space.
How long will he stay in this bay?
That's a good question. As you can see, we're getting a bit of a rush at the moment.
Okay.
Oh, they want to know. Okay.
We've got 3 ambulances coming, we need rooms.
There's someone, because he's a sepsis guy.
The challenge is freeing up beds.
Yes, I'm off to rehab.
On the other side of the hospital is the discharge lounge, with those patients fit to leave.
We're going to go and get you some clothes on, Mum, because you can't go out in your nightie.
After 2 weeks' treatment for a chest infection, 100-year-old Kathleen is heading off with her family.
Take care. Bye.
Hugh Pym, BBC News, Chesterfield.
Britain's Emma Raducanu is into the 3rd round of the Australian Open for the first time. The 22-year-old overcame injury scares to beat her opponent Amanda Anisimova in straight sets. Spectator behaviour at the tournament has been in the spotlight this week, and one player had her own response to it, as Andy Swiss reports.
In the end, it was all smiles, but not much has been straightforward for Emma Raducanu recently, and this certainly wasn't.
Yes, she's made it.
She took the first set against Amanda Anisimova, but then an injury scare. Raducanu, who's been struggling with back spasms, needed treatment. She later said she had to push past the pain, and thrillingly she did.
Outstanding.
From trailing in the second set, she battled to the grittiest of victories.
She's done it.
But not every winner in Melbourne was quite so appreciated. America's Danielle Collins taking on not only Australia's Destiny Iver, but a hostile home crowd. Collins later thanked the hecklers for paying her bills after winning the match, if not the popularity contest. Andy Swiss, BBC News.
Now, when you're hanging around waiting for something to happen, there's always the option of taking a walk to help pass the time. That was certainly the case today for NASA's Sunny Williams. She's ventured outside the International Space Station for the first time since June, when safety issues grounded the flight home, which she was due to share with her fellow astronaut Butch Wilmore. The pair thought they'd be spending just a week in orbit. Their current estimated time of arrival back on Earth is March or possibly April. the springtime, in fact. So time for a look at the winter weather. Here's Louise. Hi, Louise.
Makes my dog walk this morning look really boring. Never mind. Yes, quite quiet, the weather story at the moment. And quiet weather at this time of year can allow some of this. Yes, we might be chasing some mist and fog around for tomorrow morning for one or two of us. And it could be some poor visibility in places. Now, the potential for the mist and fog just moves that little bit further north. It's where we've seen the clear skies and the sunshine today. So potential across southwest England, North Wales, up into northern England. Bit too much cloud across the southeast and certainly more of a breeze with some showery outbreaks of rain, gales perhaps across the Northern Isles through the night. Here we keep double figures. Elsewhere it could be quite a chilly start with low single figures for one or two of us. But as we go into Friday, we will certainly be chasing cloud amounts around. If you've got some mist and fog, that will lift, but the cloud may well linger. Perhaps favoured spots to the east of the Pennines, we could see a few glimpses of sunshine. Showery outbreaks of rain continue into Scotland and Northern Ireland, but here it stays relatively mild with double figures. Further south, we're looking at highs around 7 or 8 degrees. Don't expect too much in the way of significant change as we move into the weekend, but it may well get just that little bit colder. We're still under this influence of high pressure, but with the wind direction changing slightly, we tap into a cooler pool of air from the near continent. So that will make a difference. That weather front out in the west taking its time to arrive. So first thing on Saturday morning, chilly start with temperatures down to or just below freezing. And for some, again, mist and fog could linger. And if that happens across central and eastern England, temperatures a little bit more subdued. All the time, more of a breeze further north and west. We keep that milder air in place. Now, as we move out of Saturday into Sunday, don't expect that much in the way of significant change too quickly. It stays relatively quiet, but something a little wetter potentially as we move into the middle part of the week. Rita.
Thank you very much, Louise. And that is tonight's BBC News at 6. You can, of course, keep up with all the latest developments on the BBC website. But now it's time to join our colleagues for the news where you are. Bye-bye.